The largest private sector forum linked to the broader APEC agenda is the APEC CEO Summit. And South Korea hopes this year the platform serves as an opportunity for renewed commitment to regional cooperation and sustainable growth. Hello and welcome to Tuesday's edition of Press Perspective. It's October 28th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. The APEC CEO Summit begins with a welcome reception on this Tuesday evening before its opening ceremony tomorrow, that is Wednesday. That will be followed by 20 sessions on economic challenges, cooperation strategies and digital transformation up until its closing day on Friday. For more on this, I have Fabian Kretschmer with German press agency DPA here in the studio. Fabian, welcome back.
Great to be back in the studio.
I also have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24 Live on the line. Chloe, it's good to have you on.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Fabian, we shall start here in the studio. So what is the APEC CEO Summit and what is its relevance, keeping, of course, in mind the current global trade environment?
Yeah, as the name indicates, it's a business summit, so all the big CEOs of international companies will be present. I think we are going to talk about the guest list in a moment, but I mean, really all the big companies, especially tech companies, will send representatives, usually the CEO. And I think the idea behind the CEO Summit is to have a bridge between the private economy and the government. So basically, I mean, personally, from a journalistic perspective, I don't expect the panel discussions, the public discussions to be super juicy or like relevant, because usually CEOs tend to be quite cautious and very diplomatic. But what will be spoken behind closed doors could be quite relevant. I mean, deals can be done, or just, you know, the CEOs will have an opportunity to relay their message, to tell what is in their interest. And right now, what we see is that there's a fragmentation of economic cycles. We see with geopolitical tensions rising that, you know, China is imposing its own rules. It has, you know, its own market that is becoming increasingly protectionist. The same actually on the US side. And then from the big companies, I mean, they are international operations. They cannot, you know, ignore the Chinese market and cannot ignore the US market. So their message most likely will be, we want to do business with both sides. And how can that be realistic? And how can we maybe reduce tensions between the Western and the Chinese world?
Right, and keeping in mind what Fabian has just said, Chloe, the APEC CEO Summit also includes addresses by global leaders. So who's on the speech roster and what do we know about their messages, Chloe?
So I would say the VIP, like the most important speech we're going to be waiting for, will be Donald Trump, the US president's key speech notes that will be delivered tomorrow during a luncheon with the CEO Summit participants. So we know that it's quite important because according to his current planning, he's not going to be attending most of the rest of the APEC Leaders Summit. So this speech notes, like this speech, is going to be very looked upon, especially regarding any hint on US tariffs, because most of the discussions are still going on for a lot of countries. So all the CEOs there are going to be having a look at what Donald Trump is showing off and what's the direction that could be taken by the US regarding the tariffs. There might also be some invitation from him for foreign investment to come into the United States. He has done it quite a lot in the very recent past. We've seen it in most of the cases. For example, when the Hyundai workers were arrested, afterwards he was speaking again about sending qualified people, but also sending investment, foreign investment into the US. Let's remember, for example, that for South Korea, the United States is asking South Korea to make direct upfront investment that would be worth around $350 billion. So we kind of expect him to be speaking about it in a broader, more general way about the world. Who else is going to be speaking? We have RM from the boys band, the K-pop band BTS, who will be there. He's the first K-pop artist ever who will be talking into the CEO Summit, and he's expecting to be speaking about the rising global influence of Korean culture, so Korean soft power and Hallyu, as we've been speaking quite a lot about it here on the show. There is also the founder and CEO of NVIDIA, so the American AI chipmaker, who is going to come. Is going to have some space. One of the panel we will be discussing. And as Fabian was saying, what most of the journalists are speaking about, especially with us, so that's with our colleagues from Reuters, saying that he might actually be meeting with some Korean shipmaking companies. He could be meeting with SK Hynix and Samsung, but the representative of both companies have, according to Reuters, declined to comment on it. But again, that's the big thing of the CEO Summit, is putting together companies that could have discussion under closed door, and we'll see what can happen. And most of the big Korean groups representative are going to be there too. So we will see what will come out of this list of quite impressive guests.
Right, indeed. Fabian, so the CEO Summit, it's perhaps one of the most influential annual gatherings of corporate executives and government leaders in the Indo-Pacific. What has the foreign media been saying about the potential gains for South Korea as it hosts this event?
Well, I think the direct impact will also be on Gyeongju itself, because, I mean, as a host city, it will get a lot of media attention. It will also directly benefit from all the tourists and the participants also going to the city. So hotel profits, restaurant profits, reputation gains. I mean, that's a lot. There was actually a study done by the Korean Chamber of Commerce together with Deloitte, the consultancy agency. They guessed that, you know, APEC will have a huge economic gain. There will be an impact of $5.3 billion, and it will create over 20,000 jobs. I mean, this is only the practical side, but directly from the CEO Summit, it will give South Korea access to Donald Trump, who will, you know, be very prominently featured during this event, which might lead to business opportunities, which also might lead to, you know, getting maybe tariffs reduced. I mean, we don't know whether there will be a deal that South Korea and the US can strike, but at least they will get a lot of way to lobby. So I think there might be a lot of economic gain, but to really put this into numbers is kind of difficult, because let's see, a lot of things will happen behind closed doors, and sometimes maybe it will take some time to really see the impact.
Right, and speaking about numbers, Fabian, this is something you mentioned during our talk yesterday. Chloe, the local bourse here in the country opened its session on Monday by soaring past the 4,000 mark. Now, analysts believe investors are responding optimistically to planned bilateral summits between President Lee Jae-myung and his US counterpart Donald Trump, as well as that between Mr. Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. What have you been hearing on the ground here, Chloe?
Yeah, so it's interesting to see that the benchmarks of Korea Composite Stock Price Index, so the KOSPI, has been rising up. A 4,000 mark is a big deal. It's the first time in KOSPI history. It's especially the sector of semiconductors that have been driving the rise. So what we can see is probably that, excuse me, the semiconductors are driving because that's what's the most prominent sector at the moment. And according to experts, there is kind of a lucky draw of reasons. So global liquidity are being installed into the system because of the current instability, kind of. So the investors are going more into dangerous or risky assets. So there's more liquidity. And then, so the semiconductor cycle is going up again. And then there is also the fact that there's been market reforms done by President Lee Jae-myung administration that are working. My bad.
Right. Maybe, Chloe, we should give you a few minutes to catch your breath. And while we wait for that, Fabian, I will turn to you first. As South Korea's hosting of this year's APEC Summit, Fabian, it's expected to put to test President Lee Jae-myung's pragmatic diplomacy. Now, beyond the official APEC agenda, Seoul Summit with Washington is expected to realign its ties with that country, while Seoul Summit with Tokyo is expected to retain ties on the proper productive track, that is, while its summit with Beijing is expected to perhaps reinvigorate ties. What have you been hearing on the ground with regard to Korea's pragmatic diplomacy this week?
Yeah, I think you can call it pragmatic. When you look at what the South Korean government, the foreign ministry have been saying, the rhetoric is basically to please or try to please all sides. You can hear some subtle critique towards the US. Of course, they're not happy with the tariffs, but kind of trying to stay loyal also with in terms of security towards Japan. South Korea is also, at least willing to maintain good relationship, and I think that will work, at least if the new prime minister in Japan will not provoke any revisionist, history. I mean, I think that's now up to her. But basically, South Korea is interested in having good relationship with Japan. And then to China, I think also what the South Korean foreign minister Cho Yeon told in a recent interview is, we want to have a new start. I mean, our previous government, the conservative government under Yoon Suk-yeol, they were quite provocative, but I think we are open to re-establish ties. So that also sounds quite, positive. You can also critically analyze it and say, well, we don't really know what South Korea stands for in the world. You cannot always please everyone. But I mean, the position of South Korea is, in between big world powers. So I think it makes sense from the perspective of Seoul to try to be, pragmatic and also not take sides, but really try to get along with all the big powers in this region.
Right. Fabian, I understand you're closely following the Chinese delegation's agenda here in South Korea. Could you tell us a bit about your coverage?
Well, actually, my coverage of the Chinese strategy also towards Donald Trump, I have to revise a lot of my arguments. Why? Because, I mean, I always assumed that the Chinese side was not particularly interested in striking a big deal with Donald Trump. A lot of experts, for example, the former president of the European Chamber of Beijing, he's a German and he lived in China for several decades. He told me that, it seems that the strategy by the Chinese is to keep Trump busy, basically, give him some small success that he can blow up and present as a big success, but then maybe it will escalate again, and that it will be basically a game of negotiating through his whole term until basically Trump will step down and another president will be in power. But this is really not accurate anymore. I think now it seems that the Chinese side and the US side have found some kind of agreement, and I'm expecting that both sides will present a deal, maybe a big deal in terms of tariffs, all the other points of contention. So I think maybe it could be even a historic day on Thursday. And so the strategy of the Chinese, I think, right now is to play nice with the US.
Right, and we shall find out later this week when President Trump sits down with his Chinese counterpart here in South Korea. Of course, Chloe, welcome back. Hope you're feeling better now. Chloe, you were talking about the investor sentiment here in South Korea amid talk about bilateral summits between superpowers. Do tell us a bit more about the positive sentiment on the local stock market, Chloe.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I was just, start of winter here in Korea has been quite strong. So as I was saying, so there's a mix, a lucky draw kind of different factors that are working well together to make this big raise actually into the KOSPI. It has been raising 68.5% since the beginning of the year. So that's nice to see that the KOSPI is actually working again and gaining some strength. And so regarding the foreign media coverage here, there's been, for now, not that many coverage on the APEC Summit, like Leader Summit itself, because it has not been done yet, so we don't have results. Europe has been mostly focusing on the Xi Jinping and Trump meeting together. So that's one of the big headlines that for now is being there. There's also some side coverages, especially on South Korea. So I was saying that what's driving the KOSPI index is the semiconductor. And it's true that it's something that's been discussed a lot in the European media is the AI and South Korea, and South Korea has a big strategy on AI and semiconductors and new technologies. Also, trade deals in Asia with the United States. That's mostly linked to the fact that Donald Trump is doing a very big campaign, like going around in Asia, and he's been in ASEAN just recently. He's in Japan now. He'll be in Korea soon. So this is a good way for European media to speak a bit in detail about all the politics regarding the US in the different countries of Asia that he's been visiting. So that's mostly what's being done for now. And I can only imagine that just as for the CEO Summit, there will be more developed coverage once we have facts and stuff happening that we can be talking about more in detail.
Right, for sure. Now, in speaking about media headlines with regard to the APEC summit here in the country, Fabian, this is an impromptu question, but keeping in mind your coverage of the Chinese delegation's agenda here in South Korea, there is quite a bit of speculation within the local media here in the country that President Xi Jinping might also address the APEC CEO Summit in a speech. Keeping that in mind, what do you suppose might he seek to address during that potential speech?
Well, I think the message that Xi Jinping would likely convey is that, China stands for a multilateral order, that it does not want confrontation, that it wants a rule-based order. But I mean, personally, after also having lived quite some time in Beijing, I mean, I kind of see some discrepancy what is the Chinese official rhetoric and what it actually does. So I think that there is some contradiction also, because right now I see neither of the big world power. I mean, neither Beijing nor Washington really standing in for a rules-based order. I think we rather move towards a more Darwinistic world, a Machiavelli world where power rules and the stronger power really dominates. But yeah, I think what China really wants to avoid is, at least that's what it says, is that they don't want a block building like during the Cold War. But actually, ironically, that's really what we are seeing right now, that there are two blocks forming. But what we can also see that maybe tomorrow could, or the day after tomorrow could serve as a plot point, and that the dynamic could shift again a little bit. Right now, between China and the US, I see a lot of potential for de-escalation, and that would be definitely good for the whole world.
Right, and speaking of tomorrow, Chloe, President Lee Jae-myung delves into his diplomatic agenda on the margins of the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju. Could you walk us through some of the more anticipated summits, if you will?
Yeah, so he's obviously, because he's the leader of the host country, so we are expecting him to be at the big APEC Summit moment. So it will be obviously at the CEO meeting that's starting tomorrow. And then it will be at the APEC leaders meeting from the 31st to the 1st of November. But what we're really looking at now is the main bilateral summits that are going to be expected. So we know he's going to meet with Donald Trump tomorrow on the 29th. The whole idea would be to try and get the deal on the tariffs done, but we're not sure if it's going to be possible. But we know that Lee Jae-myung is probably going to discuss with Donald Trump about modernizing the alliance with the US. So will it be possible to get a deal? Could that be done through speaking about the army and financial, giving more money to the US to keep the US army there? Will it be done through other way? We know that there's been also the MASCA, Make American Shipbuilding Great Again initiative that's been offered in the deals. So that's one of the big moments that we're expecting. Another one would be the meeting with Xi Jinping, so the Chinese president, on the 1st, so that would be Saturday, and the meeting with Japanese Prime Minister, the new Japanese Prime Minister, Sanae Takashi. For both of them, there is interesting view to see how the diplomacy of Lee Jae-myung will be put to the test in real time, because those three countries are very important for South Korea in the diplomatic ties. And it's interesting to see, because all of the three of them are going to be there, and everyone is going to be meeting on bilateral meetings. So there will be questioning on how to try to keep, obviously, the American ally happy, but in the same time getting more deals maybe with China. Also, I think it's interesting to see what's going to go on with Japan, because the new prime minister, so that means a new relationship that has to be built. Would it be possible to continue the partnership as it was done before with the previous prime minister? This is a big question, because she's more nationalist, so probably less pro South Korea. So that's something that's need to be seen, and I think that it's going to be some busy days actually for President Lee Jae-myung. But I would also say I do expect it to be some very fruitful days here there in Gyeongju for the APEC Summit, and we'll see what's going on in the end. But I do believe that it's a good test for the diplomacy of Lee Jae-myung and pragmatism that is being putting forward. So let's see how it goes.
Right, we shall see how it goes. And busy days for you as well as members of the press, of course, Chloe. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today, Chloe. And Fabian here in the studio, thank you very much for your thoughts. Right, that ends Press Perspective for today. As always, thank you for watching.